the meeting of the Bellevue City Council. This is our City Council study session for October 7, 2019. I anticipate Councilmember Robertson will be joining us shortly. We have concluded our executive session on a quasi-judicial matter, and we're moving to our study session items, which is a look at Transportation Capital Investment Program and our Neighborhood Levy Program. So, Mr. Miyake.
Yes, thank you, Council members. As you mentioned, this is the one topic that we have for the study session this evening. It is an informational update to the council with respect to a number of capital projects underway that we have planned. And as you mentioned, with the special emphasis on the levy projects that are underway and planned, as well as, and some have been completed, as well as some of the projects that are underway that were funded by TIFIA loan. So joining us this evening is Ron Kessick, our Assistant Director in Transportation, and to his left is John Murphy, our Senior Planner and Levy Coordinator. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ron to kick the presentation off.
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of Council. Tonight, as Mr. Miyake indicated, we're going to do a quick review of the 2019-2025 CIP. I'm going to focus a little bit tonight on the status of our TIFIA and TIFIA-related projects, to give you an update on that, before handing off to Mr. Murphy to talk about the levy projects and project status. And we'll end up having a significant amount of time for question and answer at the end, hopefully. Just as a refresher, the Transportation CIP represents about 40% of the overall CIP. About 75% of that, or $209 million, is dedicated to discrete projects or projects that build new infrastructure. The remaining 25%, or about $69 million, is for ongoing maintenance programs, including our M1 roadway overlay program. Question was asked earlier today regarding debt service, and the Transportation CIP represents about half of that existing 25% debt service. In round numbers, based upon my math just a few minutes ago, that comes out to about $86.9 million of that debt service, with the balance of the rest primarily being debt service associated with City Hall. The TIFIA loan repayment does not become part of the debt service until 2025 when we start making payment on that. Our revenues associated with the CIP primarily 46% major taxes. A significant percentage is the levy, 20%, and a significant additional percentage is our TIFIA loan, about 22%. Our TIFIA loan was $99.6 million, with the balance made up of grants and other resources. I mentioned back in April when I came before you to talk about our CIP that one of my motivations back then was to advise council and advise the public that we were going to have a very busy 2019 construction season. And we are. Right now, we have 17 projects under construction. A wide variety of different types of projects, everything from sidewalk and bike projects to very major roadway projects. And that does not include the projects you see that are associated with development. Does not include our overlay. Does not include the franchise utility work. All the other work that you see out on our public roadways right now, which there is a lot. The managing of that work is being done through our right-of-way use group. They handle the permits for all of the right-of-way uses in the city and coordinate everyone's uses so we're not conflicting with each other and we're not conflicting in regards to side-by-side roadways being closed at any one certain time. They do a tremendous job based upon all the permits that they're issuing. It's roughly 2,000 permits a year, and are doing a real bang-up job in helping us keep this city moving. When we are doing our projects, we really need to give a lot of credit to other city departments as well. When we are busy, that means Tony's financial staff are busy. It means her real property staff, her survey staff are right alongside, hand in hand with us on delivering all these projects. Our legal staff is right along with us as well. And so when we're busy, there are a lot of other departments that are busy as well. We recognize the importance of public outreach on all of our projects and making the public aware of the status of our projects and when we are going to construction, when we are in construction with information. Marie Jensen is doing a heck of a job in keeping the public aware of our projects through a wide variety of outreach mechanisms. We typically send out mailers associated with a lot of our projects. Mailers go out to businesses and residents, typically within a half-mile of our project, just in case they may be impacted or may just want to know what is happening in their area. These include general project updates, construction alerts, open house or project-related information that she sends out on a regular basis. We typically get a lot of engagement through our social media. You take a look, we have our website published down below on this slide. On our website, we have a number of interactive maps that identify our projects and project contact information with project detail. We use email on a regular basis and text alerts. We use media such as Nextdoor, Twitter, a wide variety of electronic media, and that creates a lot of dialogue with the public associated with our project. Regarding our TIFIA projects, you may recall that with our TIFIA loan, we had to provide a 67% match. Our match was done in a unique way. We worked with US DOT so that we could utilize projects that were either programmed in our CIP at that time or projects that had recently been completed that were in the sphere of the Bell Red area. That included projects like our Northeast 4th extension from 116th to 120th, the phases of 120th Avenue, Spring Boulevard, etc. We have two big TIFIA match projects, our final two big TIFIA match projects that are currently in construction. 124th Avenue, Spring to Ichigo, is a project that is a partnership project with Sound Transit, where we are again raising the roadway over the light rail alignment. We currently have 124th Avenue closed for this work. It'll be closed for several more months as a contractor completes that bridge section and raises the roadway over the rail. Spring Boulevard, Spring 1B, we actually did first, and that you may recall is the bridge over the light rail that we council funded ahead of schedule so we could complete that work prior to the East Link beginning fare service or running trains on their rail. By doing so, we saved up to $14 million as compared to trying to construct that overactive rail and the limitations that would provide. We are now completing 1A of that section. That's the connection over to 116th Avenue. We hope to have that work completed by the end of the year. We are waiting on some steel deliveries for our signal poles, some other poles that are a bit delayed due to just the time lag in manufacture of steel items like that being 8 to 9 months right now. Regarding our TIFIA funded projects, we have our first TIFIA funded project in construction right now. It is Spring Boulevard. Council recently awarded the contract between 120th and 124th Avenue. We are just beginning that work. And this is a section of Spring Boulevard that goes right through the heart of the Spring District. We have the East Link Light Rail immediately to the north of us. We have REI construction immediately to the south of us. And we're going to be building right in the middle of all three. And so we are coordinating with contractors on both sides of us as we complete our roadway out there and prepare for REI opening about second quarter of next year. We have two phases of 124th Avenue, north and south of where we are working currently, which is essentially right in the middle between Bell Red and Northup Way, that we are On the north end, we are well past 90% design. On the south end, we are between 60 and 90% design, working on property acquisition, property appraisals at this point. We are hoping that the property acquisition process goes smoothly, and we may try and put those two phases of work out under a single construction contract. By doing so, we typically save money because we have a single mobilization, and it's just economies of scale. The more work you can include, the better price you're going to get. The last two projects you see up there, 130th Avenue, Bellevue to Northup, and Spring Boulevard, 130th to 132nd, are also nearing 90% design. We are, again, in the property appraisal process. Real property staff are working very hard on all these projects with us. And these two projects, again, we would like to try and put out under a single contract for the same reasons. A primary catalyst of doing so here is that the 130th Spring Boulevard intersection needs to be built, and that is right at the East Link alignment. We'd like a single contractor in doing that work. We are pushing hard on the project schedule of those two projects to have those two projects completed before Sound Transit completes fare service, or begins fare service, excuse me. Trying to build those two projects around an active rail line would be very difficult. And so we're pushing hard to get this done ahead of time, which would put us ahead of time on the overall TIFIA timeline, which is not a bad thing. We have a couple additional major projects that are currently in construction. Council also recently awarded the construction contract for the Mountain Sound Greenway Trail. This involves the bridge over Factoria Boulevard, the tunnel underneath the freeway ramp that leads to Factoria Boulevard, and the widening of that ramp. If you've been out there, you'll see that the contractor is starting to build platforms for the drilling of piles, and we'll be hitting it very hard here very quickly, and you'll see a lot of work out there. Newport Way, 150th, we have completed the wall on the east side of the roadway. On the west side, we are coordinating with franchise utilities. A lot of times on our projects, the franchise utilities do work, then we step in, we do work. Franchise utilities come back and finish up their work to get out of our way, then we step in, and that's what's happening right now. So you'll see franchise utility work, and then we'll begin in earnest on the congestion management portion of that project, which widens, adds a lane in the southbound direction approaching Newport Way. We have a number of projects, major projects that are still in design. Newport Way and Westlake Sammamish Parkway, we hope to have out to add later this month or early next month to begin construction very early next year. I know the public has been waiting for both of those projects. We have as well, and we're just about ready to go, finalizing a couple of property acquisition and design issues, just tidying up a couple loose ends. Spring Boulevard in the westbound direction is also one of our TIFIA match projects. That is a city-funded CIP project. We decided we're going to design that in-house. The eastbound lanes had some big walls that had to be built, and the westbound is pretty much easier comparatively. We're going to save some money and design that in-house and get that out. Also want to talk to you real quick about the Bellevue College Connector. You may recall the council funded that to about $400,000 in the last CIP. We are working on a three-party agreement with King County Metro and Bellevue College to each contribute at this point $100,000 to identify what this project looks like, what are the property impacts, and identify what it may cost. And then we'll come back to all parties will come back, and we'll come back to council and let you know where we're at on that. Before we commit to spending the full $400,000, we can talk about where we're at and what we see this project shaping up to be. The CIP funds our ongoing programs, many of which are supported by the levy projects that John will identify. And we are also progressing well into our pavement management projects. And if you haven't been out in the Tam O'Shanter area recently, I would encourage you to go out to Tam O'Shanter, because we have changed that neighborhood completely. By redoing the roads, redoing the sidewalks, we have totally enlivened that neighborhood, and it looks spectacular. We have some really cool before and after pictures that I'd love to be able to share with you sometime. But the improvements in that neighborhood were really incredible, and we're very proud of that. We also, in the CIP, have some funding for Westlake Sam Phase 3 out in 2023 and 2025. And design and right-of-way acquisition funding for Bellevue Way HOV lane out starting in 2023. We are continuing our partnership with the East Link project. You can see in this picture, this is looking from our new Spring Boulevard bridge over the light rail towards the maintenance facility, towards the north. And so on the right-hand side of the picture, you have the track alignment that comes in from Bell Red. And on the left-hand picture, that's a track alignment to or from the downtown area. And so you can see the tracks are in, and it's starting to look like something out there. Us having our bridge done is nice, and not having to worry about coordinating that over the track. East Link project, by our understanding, is about 63% complete at this point.
Did we save money by doing it that way?
We saved a lot of money by doing it that way. We saved, $14 million at one point, especially if we ended up having to do what they call girder launching. We saved a lot. I don't have any new projects to add to this particular table at this point. We have 7 projects that we are just tidying up, and so when I come to you next time, I'll have a whole bunch of dots all over this table that you haven't seen before, but right now you have already seen this. We do have a couple of new projects where we're looking at design costs as a % of our original construction contract. We added Spring to Ichigo that came in at 27%. Again, our target is plus or minus 25%, plus or minus a couple percent. We're a little bit higher on that project because of the multi-agency coordination effort and who ends up paying for what associated with that project. Spring Boulevard, Zone 2, 120th to 124th, we came in at 20%, so we're well under our target on that one. A couple project issues I want to bring to your attention. We will be following up with you on consent calendar at a later time, but we do have a couple issues. On the 150th wall replacement project, I don't know if any of you have done home remodeling. When you tear into a wall, you find all sorts of fun stuff behind that wall. And when we started getting into what was behind the existing rockery, we found that for seismic purposes, we needed to go to a larger, heftier block in our block walls and make the wall a little bit taller for seismic purposes. In doing so, we are going to ultimately have to increase the construction contract, but that work is reimbursed by the county. And so it will not net cost the city anything. On the Mountains to Sound Greenway, prior to us receiving $16 million worth of state funding for the project that we currently have under construction around the Factoria area, we had sought grant funding for different phases of Mountains to Sound Greenway, including the phase way out to the east by Lakemont Boulevard. The funding that we have is federal funding, and they require construction within 10 years of acceptance of that grant. The money that we would need in order to construct that set of project out there is about $10 million, and we just don't have it in the CIP period that we need to have it in. So at this point, we are going to recommend turning back those grant funds to the funding agencies. It keeps us in good standing with the funding agencies. At the same time, we can turn around and apply for grant funds for the phases that we do have construction money for from the same agencies. So it's not our, intent to rest on our laurels. We intend to go back after those monies and do it in a phase where we can actually construct. So we're going to try and work from where we have funding at Factoria Boulevard and continue working our way east from there towards 150th Ave with the initial intent to get to 142nd Avenue, where we have a signalized intersection and can cross people safely. So you will be seeing further council action on those two items. The Mountains to Sound Greenway grant turned back will come on the 21st. $635,000. Two different grants. One of them was fairly small and one of them was 400 and something. Yeah. On the good side, we do have two new grants on the Mountains to Sound Greenway. We have $2.7 million in federal funds that we are getting in and that haven't come to council yet, so this is new information. Another $1 million that we have received from the Sound Transit Board via their System Access Fund. So we've added $3.7 million to the phase to get us to 142nd. We have a new grant coming in for $1.4 million for overlay on 148th Avenue out in 2022. And we have an application in to the TIB for grant funding on 124th Avenue, our next phase of construction between 12th and Spring Boulevard. We expect to receive an announcement on that in November. We do have TIB money in the current phase. Just as a reminder, any funding we get, grant funding or funding from other sources, is just less TIFIA money we have to borrow. And less debt service we end up paying in later on. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Mr. Murphy, and he'll talk about the neighborhood safety, connectivity, and congestion management levy.
Thank you, Ron. I would probably need about 5 hours of your time to really dig into this. I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to keep this pretty high level to make sure that you have time to ask questions at the end. Just by way of background, the 20-year Neighborhood Safety, Connectivity, and Congestion Levy was approved by voters in 2016 to really do more of what the city has done in providing safe and connected transportation facilities, build more sidewalks, build bike lanes, build more traffic calming, make sure that we maintain our system. So we generate about $5.4 million a year to build those safety and connectivity projects. And then it was the council's decision to set aside $2 million a year with the express purpose of planning, designing, building, and leveraging grant opportunities for those projects that would reduce congestion within and near neighborhoods. So that $2 million can only be used for congestion-related purposes. The other $5.4 million gets allocated amongst those 5 categories you see on the screen. When the levy passed in 2016 and work really began in 2017, we knew that there was going to be a certain degree of staffing up and getting projects actually designed and built. We can't just take a sidewalk out to advertisement and build it in a week. It still requires fairly extensive community outreach and design and going through the proper bidding process. We were anticipating that 2019 was going to be a pretty active year because a lot of those bigger projects, 500,000 to $1 million plus, would be hitting the road and actually starting construction. And that's what we saw in 2019. When I was here last year in September of 2018, we had about 13 projects that were complete and about 8 under construction. At this point, we have 22 that have been fully complete, 14 that are under construction, with many of those just on the verge of nearing completion. Each project is very different. I note that we have 90 project locations scattered throughout the entire city. Many projects involve multiple elements. A sidewalk may include some additional crossing improvements, some additional traffic calming, radar signs. So when you look at a project, there may be 7 different elements embedded within that project. So just a project itself doesn't fully tell the story, but the map really starts to get at how widely distributed these projects are in the city. It's really helping us build some firsts in Bellevue. With the levy funding, we've been able to build our first bike signal. We've been able to build our first flashing school zone around a high school. Previously, we've only had funding to build those around elementary schools, and we're looking to continue that trend and build them around middle schools and high schools to help improve the safety there. Right now, we've really had an emphasis on creating safe connections around schools. A lot of our projects are helping create safety projects around our schools. About half of, or more than half of the schools in the Bellevue School District have some sort of levy-funded safety project near their school. Quick look at what is on the horizon in 2019. At the end of this year, there will be a progress report that we'll share with the community, a similar update to what you're seeing and hearing tonight. The levy did require a vote of confidence from the community, and we want to make sure that the community can directly see what their vote is actually translating to in terms of projects within the community. So it'll highlight accomplishments to date and some financial information, and also outline what the next steps are for 2020 and beyond. Next year in 2020, we're anticipating wrapping up most of the program projects that we outlined in the 17 and 18 biennium and the 19 and 20 biennium, but we'll also start to look at programming projects for 21 and beyond to make sure that when the funding comes in at the start of 21, we're ready to design and keep building more projects throughout the community. This is definitely my favorite slide, and we have lots of similar slides we could have shown you tonight, but this example is in the Newport Hills neighborhood. This is near the Newport Heights Elementary School, and this was a sidewalk project that was funded by the levy. You can see on the left just kind of a wide shoulder, and this is about 2 blocks from the elementary school where we expect kids to be walking to school, but it's not a very conducive environment for a safe walk. And the levy helped to build a safe connection along this fairly busy road. The picture on the right was taken last Wednesday on Walk to School Day, and this project is really helping do what we want it to do, and that's create a safe connection for kids walking. Some other highlights: the 112th Avenue Northeast Crosswalk project is a fairly large project. It's a pedestrian safety project with mid-block crossings, bike lane facilities, sidewalk maintenance, and we continue to iterate on this project as we take advantage of the pavement overlay that'll be coming through in 2021 and really creating a more comfortable bike facility through there. We're in the process of designing a new traffic signal at Northeast 24th. That's part of the congestion reduction program of the levy. On the right, top right, is the 3 crossings on 156th Avenue. That should be northeast, not southeast, between Northeast 1st and Northeast 6th Street. Pretty wide road in this neighborhood and not a lot of existing crosswalks, so there are rapid flashing beacon crosswalks to improve the visibility of people crossing there. And then the bottom right is a new 2,000-foot sidewalk near Phantom Lake Elementary School that, again, helps to create one of those safe connections to schools. I'll kind of leave it there so you can ask us questions. Again, tonight's presentation is just for your information, and we'd be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, so we have about 21 minutes left to give us a minute or two before the 8 o'clock hour. If anybody were asking a city council member, I guess we can say over 52% of our capital budget goes to transportation. And you include the debt service. So just an interesting point to be able to bring up if you ever have that. I am going to start with Mr. Lee, who represents us as our liaison to the Transportation Commission. And I am going to put people on the clock because I've got questions. I've got a couple of questions, and if you could also keep your answers tight, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to keep it as much short as I can, listen to Mayor's direction. Anyway, I just want to, as the liaison to the Transportation Commission, want to say that the success of a city is demonstrated by how it spends its money. And I think you guys, transportation projects, definitely the way to spend money, good investments, because, you need to make sure that we have adequate, and there's nothing better investment than transportation. If there's something that people face every day, and as Mayor said, 40% of the CIP or more, 50% is in transportation. So, but I want to emphasize is what you see, like Ron, you were mentioning, and you talk about, John, it's the neighborhood safety, connectivity, and congestion projects, especially from the levy. You notice sidewalks, pavements, overlay, pad bike. One thing that stands out is that it's really putting in a balanced multimodal system. And I think this is something that people see. I mentioned neighborhood projects because, people see it every day. Highways and others, it just goes. It's lots of money spent on it. But it's what people actually experience every day. And I think that's making a big difference. So I want to compliment on you guys. I know you're busy, obviously, and because that's where the biggest money goes, and big or small. But the biggest one is obviously the neighborhood projects. And so I do have two questions on neighborhood projects. So one is one in around Victoria Boulevard near Newport High School. This is where I think you put in some new bike signals. And, when it's put in, we still don't know quite what exactly do they do. I don't think they are actually being operational yet. There's a big arrow with the white box and all that, and, has arrows to indicate a bike indication. And I think we need to know how it works. Maybe it's not operational, that's why we don't have any information on it. But
And the
it's something-
second question.
Yeah, that's the question. So you can answer now or let us know what it does and when it's going to be operational and how to use it.
So it will detect bikes.
Yes.
And will provide a signal based upon the detection of cycles within the bike lane. You'll notice a bike symbol out there for
Yes.
cycle detection, and it will operate just like a bike signal. So if it's, I'm not 100% sure whether it's operational at this moment, but when it is operational, you won't see anything unless a bike is detected, from my understanding.
A month ago, I think the big box with the white arrow is lit, but there's nothing happening. So people are wondering, what's that about?
Yeah,
So
we had a
it's now
malfunction.
no longer lit, but it's not working. So
Yeah,
I think
it was-
that need to be,
Yeah.
let people know. Second
Yep.
question is, around Tai Middle School, it's
Mm-hmm.
a wonderful project you've done, putting a sidewalk and for near the school. Except when it's done, the neighbors to the east of the road, 138th, I believe, has some concerns that people are blocking Pool Park, the parents driving their kids over there. And they've lost all the parking space before the sidewalk put in. Now, because of the sidewalk, they're parking along the people's outside residence.
So how are we
and they're
dealing,
blocking
how are we
sidewalks.
dealing
So
with that
take a
issue
look
of the cars that
so
are
just mention to
queuing?
you.
Okay, because you're over your 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, I know that we have advised police to begin with, because we do have people that are parking in the middle of the road to wait for their kids and other things. John, do you have more information on that?
There is a pull-out on the west side that was built into that project. to
Enough for
help-
3 cars.
It is relatively small, but it does create that walking facility for people walking to and from the school.
Parents don't walk, they drive the car, then wait for the kids.
Yeah, the school had opened up an additional lot for drop-off and pickup as well, so it may be that
should
we
work
need to
with the
work with the
school.
schools on
Yeah, take care of that.
communicating how. Okay.
I'm going to go just up the table and around, Ms. Zahn.
Thank you. Well, I'm really excited about all the projects that have been going on, And I think that the communication to the public has been working, because every time I go to one of the community meetings, I see lots of really engaged people putting their little dots on and writing comments about the projects that they see. So thank you for that. I would say I appreciate the fact that we're looking at a citywide implementation of those projects, and having that map, I just went up there, being able to tag a project and understand what it is very helpful. I do have a couple of comments. One is, when we go back, do we go back after the projects are done and get a sense for how it went, and to the neighborhood, like the sidewalk or the crosswalk? So that's, one question. Another one is on Newport Way and 150th. I have heard some residents that are concerned about, as you said, the fact that the retaining wall has some issues that have some redesign, losing that pedestrian walkway for people that maybe don't have a car and they walk down to that Safeway there.
Yeah.
So that's a concern that they have. The other one is for the bike lanes. I love the fact that we're seeing more and more bike lanes that are striped on our roads. I'm seeing people parked on those bike lanes as though they are just part of the side of the road that they can park in. So I'm wondering if we need to have some education or some more signs, like on 118th, where it does say no parking on the pavement. And then my last comment is on the table where you talk about the construction cost.
Yes.
It seems to me it would be important to understand the dollar value of these projects, because if the ones that are over are the more expensive projects and the ones that are under or less, that would be an issue. And then it looks like we're comparing original bid to actual cost.
Yep.
It seems to me we also want to understand how well we're doing in estimating our cost, the engineer's estimate, because that's what we're budgeting in our CIP.
Engineer's estimate versus low bid?
Engineer's estimate versus low bid versus the actual cost.
Okay.
And then the same thing with the design,
Okay.
to measure it against the
So
final.
areas in there that you can address
Yes,
quickly and immediately?
Happy to do engineer's estimate versus low bid. We can work on signing and education on the bike lanes. Newport 150th, the sidewalk will be, if it's not being worked on right now, they'll be starting back work on that this week. We have done post-project surveys. I can't say we've done it on every project, but we've certainly done it on some of our major projects in the past.
Perfect, thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Neuenhuis.
Thank you, and Ron, John, thanks for the great presentation, appreciate it. I agree with Councilmember Lee, feels very well balanced, so appreciate that effort as well. Question on 156, I'm so glad that you're working on that, and I get questions about that all the time, especially between 8th Avenue and Lake Hills Boulevard. I have seen the new crosswalks go on the east side, but it's different block to block. So is there a plan to have that crosswalk going, because obviously a lot of people are traveling up to Crossroads Mall, for example. So is the plan to get the crosswalk continuous on the east side from Lake Hills Boulevard all the way up to 8th?
The sidewalk?
The sidewalk, correct. Because right now, there's a block with crosswalk and then, or sidewalk, and then there's a block that doesn't have one, and then there's one, very next one, there'll be one with a sidewalk again. So I'm thinking kids are having to jump off and on in between parked cars, so I'd like to see it continuously all the way up, beyond where they're going, if it's church or the
From
mall
Lake Hills
or what.
Boulevard up to the shopping.
Exactly.
There was one block of new sidewalk built from Lake Hills
Yes.
Boulevard to Northeast First Place, between First Place and First Street, to help
Right.
facilitate, but you're right, on the east side north of there, then it does drop.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think for a lot of reasons that project makes so much sense, so does 164th. It has a lot of the same issues where it's increasingly busy with Microsoft traffic. And then on top of that, the mailboxes are all on one side of the street. So people are having to cross a very busy road with no sidewalks whatsoever. And then when people are parking on the side, it becomes quite hazardous. So maybe a project to look at that might be escalated. And then just wanted to congratulate you or thank you for your commitment to the outreach efforts. I think that's just really important. I really appreciate you doing that. Not something that we need to discuss now, but the My Bellevue app, if it would be possible, when people install that app, can they put in what neighborhood they're in so that we can alert them that way when there are construction projects in their neighborhood? I don't think that would be too much against their concerns about privacy, but if they could just identify which neighborhood they're in, just as another way to identify those folks that could be affected by it beyond text or email or what have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything that you want to address?
Sorry, anything that you want to address from Mr. Neuenhaus's comments?
Just
You good?
message received. Well,
Just a very quick note, we
Yeah.
we have been leveraging Nextdoor more and more, which allows us to really target specific neighborhoods on a project-by-project
That's great.
basis. So-
And I'd love if you could follow up with me on the 156th and 164th, please.
Will do.
Thank you.
Mr. Stokes?
You know, that last point, I think you've had a positive effect on Nextdoor. I think the conversation's a little more informed, and it really helps. I mean, seriously, it's good. Yeah, a couple of things. One, is really exciting to see these projects from the levy come in place, and they're beginning more and more of those. I remember the first one we went to, that was great, but to see these really rolling out is good too. And you're doing a good job of communicating that to people. Also, it's interesting, you didn't mention this, but I'm not sure what the phase it is, but all that work and just driving a couple of times, I hadn't been down on Eastgate going up to, to the freeway, and first time I went, it was wow. I mean, it's just so changed, going all the way up Eastgate Way on on the north side. And the interchange and changing, and it seems like it's really working, changing the lanes so that people getting on I-90 and going across from 148th and all that, the traffic does seem to be flowing a lot better. So that was just an amazing change in that. So I really appreciate that, and that's something I think we can, really talk about and let people know, and there's more going on that. I know that. The other is, I had a question about, and it wasn't mentioned, but I think isn't there an East Rail connection, or connection from Spring District to the East Rail that county was going to pay for, and the county's backed out of that? And are we looking at other funding for that? Does that ring a bell? I just didn't have time to look it up because somebody mentioned it just coming into the meeting.
So there were two connections to the Spring District area that I recall. One that kind of went down off of kind of by Children's Hospital and went down there, but another one that came in off the old rail alignment further north and came into the north end of the Spring District to
Yeah.
the multipurpose path.
Right.
I think that one's still in play.
Okay.
The one that is not funded currently is the one by Children's Hospital.
That's
And-
right, that's the one I was
And
thinking.
we are looking at that to see if we,
Okay.
how we can best do that.
Yeah.
We need to make it ADA compliant, which means we need to do a little bit of gyration in there. Real quick regarding Eastgate Way, that's a great project that shows what a catalyst that the overlay program can be, and the work that we do with the overlay program in coordinating with other projects and other needs. Traffic operations for lane configurations, installation of bike lanes, quite a few things that went in just with what would typically be an overlay.
And there's some provisions, I guess, for bus loading on the side, those concrete slabs. and-
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, the other was also going on down to, 30th and down to Westlake Sam. There's a lot of work going on there too.
Yes.
It's all connecting. It's just transforming that area in terms of transportation. And I'm really surprised to see traffic less. I mean, not less, but going better.
Flowing better.
Put it that way, yeah.
Okay, Ms. Robertson.
So I am so impressed with our transportation department and how much of a difference the neighborhood levy has made and all the other projects. I mean, well done. I'm so proud of you guys. You guys are on it every single day of the year. So it was just a great report. One comment and then one thing that's really more for my colleagues for next year's budget. I think we need to make sure that we continue to do more to educate the public about how to drive traffic circles. As we're starting to build more of those, maybe we can push it out through my Bellevue app if there's one coming to their neighborhood. But I think that would be a really helpful thing. The other thing is, that was meant for you, Councilmember Newhouse. The other thing is that it got me thinking as you have the Bellevue College three-way agreement with Metro. When I was first elected to the council 10 years ago, we had an agreement with Metro to do a downtown circulator. And because of the recession, we put that on ice and it finally, I think, just went away. So with all the growth in the downtown, I just want to bookmark this for my colleagues. I would really like to start thinking about that maybe next year in the budget, because I think it's the time. We've got to do more. Building pavement is awesome. We need to make sure that we continue to improve our right-of-way, but we also need to find other ways that we can partner with Metro, with our downtown employers, et cetera, to move more people. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
So these road projects are really good news for the city. And when we were in Dallas last week on our study tour, the city manager asked how many of us felt that our roads were in terrible shape, and nobody raised their hand. And he couldn't.
That's good.
I know, he couldn't believe it. So I mean, this is great for a city, but it gets a little weary to the people who live here. And I was wondering if you can let us know what we can expect. You kind of alluded to it in the presentation, but also include how Sound Transit, when they're going to be finished with their construction, and when we might see a little relief in these projects for us.
I think Sound Transit indicated last time they were here, they're about 6 months ahead of schedule, their projected schedule, assuming everything goes smoothly from here on out. They still have quite a bit of work to do, the systems work, the track work, et cetera. But that work is progressing well. They were intending to be operational in 2023. Might be very early 2023, perhaps late 2022 at this point. At that time, we are hoping to have all of our TIFIA Bellred related projects complete. By that time, we will have Westlake Sam done. We will have Newport Way done. We'll be, back into our next round of levy projects. But we have a kind of a bulge in the CIP that we're working our way through on these major projects that is primarily TIFIA driven. And that'll be working its way through, and will be well completed with a lot of that major work.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of quick questions. The first one being, and I'll put myself on the clock, the end of Spring Boulevard as it connects up to Northeast 12th. That's essentially, from what I can tell, going by there done, except we can't get the poles for the traffic lights, and we have to get that in before we can do the final landscaping.
We don't need that for the final landscaping. We can start the landscaping. We can do a lot of the other, little matter work that we have to do. We have to put in railings, different things like that. But certainly the poles are, we can't operate it without the signal system going in. So.
But why can't we, I guess there are only 2 fabricators in the country, or?
There are 2 significant pole fabricators in the country that are working on this, and the backlog is 8 to 9 months.
Is the backlog related to steel availability, or is it just and the tariffs, or?
All the above, yeah. The tariffs certainly, but federal money being freed up for projects nationwide drives the Buy America policies, Buy America requirements, and we're in that up to our eyeballs with our TIFIA loan, right. And so we are limited in where we can obtain certain materials, and so we're just kind of in the bite on that, and it is something, as part of our TIFIA project, and remember, we are replacing 2 of the lattice towers with monopoles out there for Seattle City Light. The order time for that is 9 months, and so we want to be to add on that project in January for an October build and an October line outage out there. So we are having to plan that in our scheduling and hope like heck that the steel shows up when it's supposed to.
So, I think this is a significant subject about availability. I'm all in favor of the Buy America program, but America has to be able to deliver. And I mean, if we're having these issues, I think this is something that we should be bringing up, because it's going to happen for a lot of CIP projects.
Yes.
Totally separate, Councilmember Robertson reminded me of it, traffic circles as we add them. How do we tell GPS providers to say exit at the second exit? In other words, when you've got your GPS on,
Yeah.
it will tell you how to go around the traffic circle?
I don't know
Do
the
you know
answer to
how-
that.
It would be, I mean, since we're doing that, I think it would be really, really good to do. What are the streets out in Tam O'Shanter that I should go drive slowly at and get on the Tam O'Shanter next door as a creeping car looking
That's
for
it.
stuff?
I can send you all a list of the
Okay.
streets that we did and some of the before after pictures if you'd like to go out and take a look.
Yeah,
it
I'd
is
really,
really cool.
truthfully, I would love to see that, and maybe some of the before and after pictures.
Yep, I will do
That's
so.
a great thing, but it'd be really great, so I'm not just driving aimlessly about
I will get that
and
list to
drawing
you.
attention to next door. Is there anything else to come before us in study session tonight? Anything? Seeing none, we'll try to get going as close to 8 o'clock as possible, only 2 minutes. Study session is adjourned. I will call to order this meeting of the Bellevue City Council. This is the council regular session for Monday, October 7th, 2019. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Chelmanack,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Robinson,
Here.
Councilmember Lee,
Here.
Councilmember Newenhouse,
Here.
Councilmember Robertson,
Present.
Councilmember Stokes,
Here.
Councilmember Zahn.
Here.
Councilmember Stokes, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is it possible to ask someone from staff to go to the room and get my iPad? Could I get someone? Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. We are at the reading of a proclamation. This is Domestic Violence Action Month, and so I have asked, and the deputy mayor has volunteered to read the proclamation.
Thank you. Whereas domestic violence is a serious crime that affects 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men during their lifetime, and whereas domestic violence is widespread and has a devastating impact on survivors, children, families, and our community, and whereas domestic violence does not discriminate and crosses all economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal barriers and is sustained by indifference, and whereas ending the cycle of this vicious crime requires the courage of survivors and the support of the larger community, and whereas education, prevention, and intervention efforts to end the cycle of domestic violence are imperative to not only protect survivors, but also to increase public awareness of the severity and extent of domestic violence. Now therefore, John Chelmanack, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2019 as Domestic Violence Action Month. Should I read the rest?
I think that's fine. I think that's okay. Great. Thank you. I think we have Major McCracken, and do we have a board member from LifeWire who is, oh, yes, we do have a board member from LifeWire who is here. Would you like to get your picture taken with the council, young man?
That would be so special. I have a frame already for it, so I've just been looking for something to put in that frame.
And he did. We'll go, we have someone to take the picture. Yes, there's.
I will just say that we urge anybody experiencing domestic
Yeah.
violence to contact LifeWire.
Right.
So I'm actually accepting this on behalf of LifeWire, but clearly most of you know that my other hat, is in law enforcement. And I have been working on and off with both LifeWire and Eastside Domestic Violence since, I'm going to say the 80s, because anything before that would just make me seem older than I already am. But they do a lot of incredible work in the area of domestic violence. And I think most of you know that the statistics say that 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence, 1 in 9 men will experience domestic violence, and people end up homeless because of this crime. And LifeWire does everything to make sure that victims and survivors of domestic violence get the support that they need. So any opportunity that you can take to please support LifeWire and their efforts to help curb domestic violence would be much appreciated. And thank you very much. It's an honor to be here tonight to accept this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, can I have one?
Absolutely. If you would, I would very much like, because I won't even tell you how embarrassed I am.
There's no reason to be. The deputy mayor did a fine job. I just wanted to just quickly thank the city manager and staff for the wonderful banner we have at City Hall recognizing Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the contact information that's appropriate, that's on that banner. So for anyone who might be experiencing domestic violence, understands where to go for that information. So I just want to give some kudos to staff on that and really appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
We are now moving to our next agenda item, which is approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. We are at communication, written and oral. I'll ask the clerk, do we have people signed up to speak tonight?
There is one individual that signed up, but it's Mr. Markley, who I believe is going to give the pro-campaign statement under the EMS levy.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So is there anybody who wishes to speak to the council on any matter this evening? Seeing none, we will close communication, written and oral. That is the first time that's happened in a long time. We do not have any reports of community councils, boards, and commissions, so we will go to the report of the city manager. And maybe it was that people read the packet and they were intimidated by this whole new sign-up system that we're coming up with, and that's why they didn't come down. Actually, this is in regard to how people will sign up for oral communication here at council, and so I'll turn it over to the city manager, and we may have some questions for you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. You've teed that up quite well, Mayor. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn over to Kyle Stannard to do the further presentation on some of the improvements and, as you mentioned, the change to oral communication sign-in. Kyle?
Thank you, City Manager, and good evening, Council. This was a bit of a fizzle in terms of as we start to phase out a paper form, but it's still all good news. There's a number of reasons that you would expect the City Clerk's office to come talk to you about procedures and different things that happen with the City Council meeting, but I wanted to put a broader layer on this topic before turning it over to Charmaine Arredondo, our City Clerk, for the rest of the presentation. As you may recall, back at your August meeting, we got an update from the Diversity Advantage team. And there was a number of themes from that presentation that I think resonated with all of us, including universal design, ADA accommodations, as well as making sure that there's translation of as many city materials as possible into multiple languages. And some of the updates that you're going to hear tonight come directly from that. We'll also point to something that we didn't touch on. It's not of huge significance, but you'll even notice something as small as the microphone that's been added to the table in front of us, realizing that not everyone may be able to speak to you during oral communications at the podium. So the trainings and the outreach that's happening from our diversity team reaches far and wide, including council meetings. For tonight, focusing on that sign-in kiosk, the changes that are impacted here are definitely with universal design, the ability to offer different text sizes for people with different abilities in terms of reading. A paper form, as you would expect, is very static. The kiosk will be, as you'll see, on an iPad, which enables zooming. We also have tested the kiosk to make sure that it accommodates the American with Disabilities Act standards, which it does, and then again sets a foundation for providing future options of introducing the form in multiple languages. So there's a lot to build from here, but first we're going to test it out and see how things go. So to give you a picture of what that test will look like, I'm going to turn it over to our city clerk, Charmaine Arredondo.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stannard. So this evening, like Kyle said, we just want to go over a little bit of the new process for oral communication and public hearing sign-ins. And then there are a couple of other additional improvements that one we have implemented and one that will also be implemented later this month. One of them being terms and definitions added to our agendas, and then PowerPoints from our presentations. So with that, this is actually a picture of what our kiosk will look like. So this pilot project will begin on October 21st at your regular session meeting, which would be the first opportunity for public comment that evening. This has been a partnership between the city clerk's office and the information technology department. Specifically, I want to thank Tom Roberts for his hard work on this project. I think we've delivered a product that hopefully will be easy for citizens to access. We'll be able to do all of the things that Kyle said. This is actually just a replacement of the paper form, nothing more. The information requested on the electronic sign-in is the same information that's requested currently on the paper form. But as you can imagine, the paper form, there's a lot of issues with the paper form. Oftentimes, handwriting is illegible. Citizens actually have the choice whether to fill the columns out or not. They may skip fields such as the topic information, which if they skip the topic information, it makes it very hard for staff to apply the council's rule regarding only 3 people being allowed to speak to one particular side of a particular topic. The lack of contact information on the paper form, if citizens actually skip that, creates a situation where when the council asks the city manager or staff to respond and get back to a citizen, it creates what we see a lot of times where the citizen then has to sidebar with a staff member and give that contact information to ensure that we have that. So besides those reasons, why else would we go electronic? Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create a more accurate record. Having an electronic record in the background is going to give us the ability to run reports, so we can find out how many times has someone come to speak about a particular topic. We could see, is there a particular heavy interest in one particular topic. As Kyle mentioned earlier, the kiosk itself is ADA compliant. As far as readability, being able to zoom, universal design, ultimately offering the form in multiple languages as a next phase of this project. Ultimately, we'd like to offer the top 5 languages in Bellevue, have that be one of your first selections, and then the form would populate in that language. And ultimately, we want to give our customers a consistent experience. So we are starting this with council, but the idea to roll out to our council-appointed boards and commissions, and then also use with hearing examiner and other public meetings. So as you can see on the right, it is fairly small, but that is actually what the sign-in screen will look like. Again, it's requesting the same information that we request on the paper form currently, but there will be pick lists. So the agenda topic that you're here to speak on will actually be a pick list of what's actually on the agenda that evening. So there are some improvements there. As I said, this pilot will go through the end of this year. So for council, that's the second week in December. If all goes well, rolling out to the boards and commissions and hearing examiner and other public meetings in early 2020. And again, adding the form in multiple languages. So moving on to terms and definitions, we wanted to offer something to kind of improve the knowledge of frequently used terms on our agendas and give the citizens a better understanding of the business of the council. So on the right, you'll see an example of what an extended study session would look like. Executive sessions, explaining exactly what an exec session is and what would qualify. What are study session items, the business before the council, what is the topic council discussion of upcoming items, what does that mean exactly? So this would be on our extended study and study session agendas. The regular session agenda, terms and definitions would include things like what is the difference between an ordinance and a resolution, what is a motion, what is the consent calendar, and what does that mean? So that would be offered under the regular session agenda. And then finally, excited about this one. So we at times receive requests from the public, sometimes at the night of the meeting where the public will come up to us after the meeting and say, can you send me or email me that council or that PowerPoint that was presented? We also, by way of public records requests, will receive a request for a particular PowerPoint, sometimes in close proximity to when it was given and sometimes months later. Those are things that we're able to give citizens right away. However, we have taken that out of the equation a little bit by allowing self-service. So they can now access PowerPoint presentations per agenda item on the council calendar page. So you navigate to the agenda, navigate to the particular agenda item you're looking for, and then what's highlighted in yellow under supporting documents will be the PowerPoint for every agenda item. Next step of that project would be rolling this out to the boards and commissions, which we anticipate them adding, for those that have migrated to the electronic packets, anticipate them adding their PowerPoints by the end of October. As of the writing of the memo that was in the packet, we had 2017 through present for council presentations. Staff put some additional work in over the last several days, and now we have 2016 through present. So for every presentation that's been given to council since 2016, the PowerPoint is now connected to that item. And those are our updates for now. Of course, this was information only, but Kyle and I are happy to take any questions or feedback on any of those.
Questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Neuenhaus.
Thank you. This is great progress, great update. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions. And I love all the reasons why. I mean, for generating reports and follow-up, it's going to be much better. You had mentioned folks could skip certain segments of the actual sign-up previously. So will this force people to fill in all the fields?
So they are required fields.
Okay.
So that creates a better record for us.
Okay.
The contact method is what we're calling a preferred contact method. So you have the option of email, address, or telephone number. You do have to select one.
Okay, so will be an absolute requirement for anyone wanting to give public comment going forward?
No, so if we were to have a situation like the mayor frequently will call, like today, calling on the audience and seeing if there was anyone who didn't sign up who was interested in speaking, that's something that we as staff would add into the system on the back end.
Okay.
Of course, we wouldn't have their contact information. They would just be giving their name, but we could put their name in the topic.
Got it. And then is there an online component to this? So therefore people could sign up, when they're at work or at home, but then could be here at the, the start of oral communications, or they have to physically be here at the kiosk to fill that out?
Currently you have to physically be here just like you do for the paper form. So because this is a web form and it's built on our platform, there's a discussion that we could have with council in the future if we wanted to allow online sign up. But currently you have to be here, and the kiosk will not be active, that form will not be active until 5 p.m. the night of the meeting, which is when we actually put the paper form out.
Okay. Well, I'd like to bring that back to council after this pilot project's completed. I think there's a lot of value in doing that. And sorry, last question. Can people sign up for oral communications in future council sessions, or can they only sign up for oral communications that particular night?
Only oral communications that particular night. So we will build the form on the back end, probably Monday mornings, that will have that evening's agenda items, and then we'll clear it out for the next meeting.
Great work. Thank you.
I definitely want to be able to sign up online. Make sure that's available after January 1st. Ms. Robertson, followed by Mr. Stokes, the Deputy Mayor, Ms. Zahn, and Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, I think this is really terrific. The PowerPoints, they'll be up after the meeting?
So,
because they're often not ready before.
Yeah, they will not be ready beforehand. Obviously, we'll want to know what was actually presented to council before we post that. So we're anticipating having the PowerPoints posted by end of day on Tuesday following the Monday meeting.
Great. And on the kiosk signups, are people able to sign up multiple people if they're here at 5?
Unfortunately, there's no way, much like with the paper form, there's no way for us to control that within the current state that it is, unless we were standing there monitoring. But that's certainly a discussion that we could have if that was a desire of the council.
It's really only an issue when we have big public hearings.
Yeah.
So it'd be great, I think, if we can add a checkbox for Bellevue resident, because people often tell us, but sometimes people don't give their addresses, and it's just good to know where people are from. We listen to them no matter where they're from, but it'd be good to know. Okay. And then finally, I'm wondering if we need to amend our council rules to require people to use the kiosk unless they're called at the end if there's time. Does it require a rule amendment?
I don't believe so, no.
No, there's nothing specifically in the rules that would be in conflict.
Well, I think this will be great because I've fumbled people's names before when I've been reading them off the line. So I think it's going to be very nice and very fair for people. Thank you.
Mr. Stokes.
No, I appreciate the comments and questions already been made. One thing I do like is, and I think it would be helpful, is to have people's name, address, or contact information, particularly since you're going to be sending things out, sending responses to them. I know some people have gotten to the habit of saying you have it on record or forgetting it. So it makes it difficult to actually communicate back with them. And
it does.
Makes you take staff time. So I think it's good to require that and get people in the habit of, saying this is me and this is where I am, where I live. And you can get that. And I think it's good to have identifying Bellevue residents. Obviously, anyone can come talk to us. So. Very good. Great work, and I really appreciate it.
Even beyond the council meetings, when we are able to roll this out to boards and commissions and hearing examiners have specific legal requirements where we have to mail out decisions of the hearing examiner to all of the participants in the hearing. So we ultimately will get back returned mail because people have written their address in a way that's illegible for us to read.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Actually, the Deputy Mayor does not have a question. Ms. Zahn, followed by Mr. Lee, and then myself.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the universal design pieces, having the microphone and all of the different pieces and parts. I think that'll be really helpful to lower the barrier for people to be able to comment. The question about the presentations and it being available the day after, I guess I'm wondering if whatever time the pencils down is for the presentation, because you still have to make hard copies, because I would like to suggest that we get to a place where the presentations are actually available online at the same time that the meetings are, so that folks can follow along if they want to, where they're sitting or whatnot. So I don't know what that timeline looks like, but it seems like we have to be pencils down at some point anyway.
We'll take that under consideration. Thank you.
And then the question about the contact. So what I heard is that there's a requirement to actually either give email, phone number, or a physical address. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that, so what if, what about folks that don't actually want to have a contact back? And they just want to be able to give testimony? Is that just not allowed?
Currently, the way that the form is designed at this point, it is a required field, but that's certainly something we could look at if people do not want to input that information. Unfortunately, we'd run into the same situation then when people may comment and then the mayor asks staff to follow up, and then we're in that situation where we don't have their contact information.
Okay. So anyway, I
But we
think
can look
I think it's worth having some more discussion later for those that may not actually want to provide that. And if that's a step in order to comment. And then I like the something in there about checking whether they're Bellevue. I actually think it might be helpful to know what neighborhood they're from, because if we're actually trying to get a better understanding of who's coming and comments, that's another piece of information that might be nice to have. So,
Okay, great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you. It's great to have a good record. Yeah, this is enables us to do that. And I have a question. Is there a time deadline for signing in during the meeting? When do you close it, or it's open?
So currently, we put the paper form out, staff put the form out at 5 PM, so the kiosk would become live at 5 PM on the
Right.
night of the meeting. The form would stay open and live, and it's a live feed from the form to basically my computer. So if someone were to sign up at, say this evening, if someone were to have just walked in and signed up, it would come to me. Obviously, we've already passed the point of oral communications, but potentially the mayor would consider taking that under continued oral communications.
So as long as it's before the oral communication, they can sign up.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the current paper form, we pull that at the
Right.
beginning of the meeting, so there isn't anything left for people
Right.
to
So
sign
it's
up
even a
with.
better feature.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee, to clarify, it would actually stay open for the entirety of the meeting, and that would give us the opportunity to follow up with people too, even if they didn't speak.
Thanks.
So a couple of things, and thank you for the questions tonight, because they've added to a couple of questions that I have. One, on the agenda drop-down, I think it would be really great to be able to have an individual be able to say, and maybe we can get to this, whether they favor the item, whether they are not favoring the item. There are usually a couple of other, neutral with concerns. I mean, there are things, and we could look at what they do in the Washington State Legislature to perhaps come up with that. And typically in a hearing, and maybe this is better for our study sessions, and maybe it would be better for the boards and commissions. But I have seen where either the clerk or the chair of the meeting will say, and an option to weigh in, but to not speak. So that there are 6 people who signed in favor, 5 people who signed in opposed, that sort of thing. I think it would be nice to get to that level. I think you should consider creating a form that for the first time sign-in, they sign in, they give you all of that information that you need, but then when they sign in the next time, either it populates or you have it all on file. I don't have a problem, I'm thinking in terms of creating records. I don't have a problem with requiring people to give their name and their address, zip code, that sort of thing. When it gets down to phone number and email address, and to have that become a public document that someone's able to get to, I'm a little more concerned about that. So maybe that could be a back end type thing eventually. I think would be helpful. I also think, and knowing how knowing how these are developed, the staff often develops their PowerPoints with some slides that they're not going to present, but they know might come up as a meeting, during the meeting, and so they have a slide prepared just for that they can bring up. So I think that flies in, that being able to do that flies in the face of being able to have it so that somebody can follow it. I do know in watching the broadcast, they spend a lot of time with the slides up. So, you know, I think anybody who is sitting at home and watching does get the opportunity to see it. The other is that needs to be, a PowerPoint is going to be PDF'd, right?
Sorry. Yes, they will all be in PDF, so they will not be, you won't be able to manipulate them, no.
Okay, and I mean, that does keep some security. It's not perfect, but it does keep some security from someone who might change a slide around for whatever reason and use it. So that's really about all the comments that I have. You think we will be able to go live with this on the 21st?
The plan is to make it live on the 21st. I didn't hear anything this evening that we wouldn't be able to either answer to before the 21st or test out, certainly.
Yeah, I have to say one thing, a lot of people do use this where they come and say my information, my address is on file with the clerk. I think because sometimes I don't know where they're from. I think having some ability, even if it's not the exact address of the house, to be able to say, you know, I live in Bellevue 98006. I think that's, you know, I've always been bothered by this. I don't know when it started. It seemed it started, I think, in the issue with the shorelines is where I first remember it coming up. So anyway, that's just me. Great work, though, on doing this, because I think what you're hearing is people always want more. And I think it does create a good system. And you do not need to sign in to attend the meeting. That we cannot require someone to identify who they are just to attend the meeting.
No, this
Okay.
is just for public speaking.
Perfect. Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we will move on to our next item of business. That next item of business would be the consent calendar.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve consent. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We are now at item 11, right, on our agenda. This would be a resolution regarding the King County Proposition Number 1, the Medic 1 Emergency Medical Services Replacement and existing existing levy. And now it says, I will turn this over to the city clerk who has some procedural information for us.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mayor. So just briefly, state law actually prevents the use of public resources for the promotion or opposition to a ballot measure. However, there is this safe harbor, excuse me while I turn this off, there we go. Safe harbor provision that allows for the council to take a position if a couple of requirements are met. Those requirements are that the agenda for the meeting includes the title and number of the ballot measure, and that members of the public and the council are afforded an approximately equal opportunity for the expression of an opposing view. After this evening, both of those requirements will have been met. So at your September 23rd meeting, the council voted unanimously 7-0 in favor of placing the taking of the position on this evening's agenda. At that point, the council directed the pro and con campaigns would be allowed up to 10 minutes to give their presentation. And after that, the public would have up to 15 minutes per side to speak for or against the ballot measure. A draft resolution supporting the ballot measure has been attached to the agenda memo and is in your packet. After the pro and con campaigns and the public comment, the council can certainly take a position and take action on the resolution, or can choose to not take any action. With that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. And we have Helen Chatalis from King County with us. She is the Assistant Emergency Medical Services Division Director for the King County Department of Public Health. She's going to give us a brief factual information staff report on the EMS replacement levy. Helen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Again, I'm Helen Chitalis, King County EMS. I do need to stress I am not here to advocate for anything, or nor am I here to oppose anything. I'm just here to talk a bit about our Medic One system and the levy that funds it. So we were here last in June, and you indulged us by allowing us to give you quite the long overview of the levy planning process and how our system works and everything else. So today I'm just going to go through very quickly some of the, kind of give you a primer of the Medic One system. So anytime you call 911 for medical emergency, you're using our Medic One EMS system. It is available to anyone, regardless of the medical emergency. By simply calling 911, you have immediate access to the system and its medical care, regardless of location, time of day, or even circumstances. The system saves thousands of lives every year. Let's see what else. We fund our system by way of a regional levy. RCW allows us to levy a property tax to fund our system. We've been doing that since 1979. Our current levy is ending at the end of this year. It's expiring. So in front of you, on the general ballot, we have Proposition 1, which is reauthorizing or renewing the Medic One levy. This levy was developed after quite the extensive process. It was inclusive, that brought together regional decision makers and EMS partners to develop our strategic plan to lead us into the future. Thank you, Councilmember Robertson, for serving on the task force. The end result of this levy planning process was a strategic plan, and we're not going to talk about today, but that is what the levy funds. It's our roadmap that the levy then funds. So what is the levy? The levy is, Proposition 1, is a 26.5-cent levy, EMS levy, for 6 years. That means that the homeowner of a $500,000 house will pay approximately $133 a year for Medic One services. But let me put that in perspective a little bit for you. For Bellevue residents, they'll pay approximately $250. To know that anytime they pick up the phone and call 911, they will have some of the most well-trained and certainly best practiced EMS personnel at their side within minutes. Let's see. So what will our Medic One levy fund? First off, it will continue the current services from 2020 through 2025. Those are the lights, that starts with lights and sirens. That pays for the dispatchers that pick up the phone and triage and determine the best possible care to send to the case. The levy partially pays for first responders or EMT or firefighters to arrive at the scene in under 5 minutes, usually. The levy also pays for paramedics. It fully funds our paramedic or ALS program. These are well-educated personnel that have gone through basically 9 months of medical school up at Harborview. It also will continue supporting some of the programs, not some, but the programs that support direct services and functions across the entire Medic One system. Those are things like medical program direction, studies, medical quality improvement reviews, so we can continually improve. It pays for training, both EMT training as well as dispatcher training, and some continuing education for paramedics. And let's see, I'm trying to kind of keep it up on a high level here before I go too deep into the situation, into the services. It also pays for current initiatives that help us become more efficient and help us try to lower the number of calls that come in. So what the levy will also fund is, they will fund the continued services that we're doing now, as well as services needed to meet future demands. Those are things like programs that modernize existing data and e-learning technology. And it pays for reserves so that we can kind of weather whatever kind of economic storm might come our way. There we go. There's a quickie overview there of the levy and what you'll get should the levy pass in November.
Okay, and that concludes your report?
Sure.
Absolutely. Are there questions for Ms. Chitalis?
I am seeing none. Thank you for being with us tonight to provide that report. I appreciate it. So we are now going to move into the provision of statements, pro statement, and if there is any con statement on it. There has been no official con campaign that has been identified. Therefore, at this time, I'm going to ask the city clerk to call, wait a minute, I am actually going to, at this point, ask Mr. Greg Markley, who is the Secretary Treasurer for the Washington State Council of Firefighters and a member of the PRO campaign, to please give the PRO statement. You have up to 10 minutes to provide us with your statement.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and honorable council members. As the mayor stated, I am the Secretary Treasurer of the Washington State Council of Firefighters. I'm also a firefighter in Kent for the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority. And it's certainly my pleasure to talk to you this evening about the Yes Medic One campaign and the levy itself. I'm a walking banner. I took some, guff for my girlfriend tonight wearing this. Tacky, she said. I said, no, what do you mean? I got to do it. So, I've worked on this campaign since 1985. And if we look back at history here, for those of you who remember, back in 1997, this levy failed. Mm-hmm. And it was a surprise to all of us, certainly the firefighters and paramedics in this county that have been around for a long time, everybody in the system, including King County EMS. So if you remember back then, we then did an emergency levy in 2008 for 3 years, and then we did this comprehensive study on should we do a countywide levy, or should everyone just break off on their own and take care of themselves? And that's a lot of models around the country, including some in the state, where cities just break off and fund their own program and don't really care about the outlying areas. So from that then study, we started this 6-year levy cycle again in 2001. And we had overwhelming numbers. We passed 82% of the vote. And I think it's just a testament to the service. Helen had alluded to the fact, certainly when I came in as a young firefighter, I was certified as an EMT. I wasn't a medic. But we have a 56% survival rate with witness cardiac arrest in this county. The national average, based on information that's available from 2013, all of the witness cardiac arrests in the nation where people self-reported. From 2013 to the end of 2018, it was 18%. And you can imagine some of these large cities like New York and LA, survival rates less than 10%. And that's really a testament certainly to the doctors that created this system, to the tiered approach that we have. We've taught everybody to call 911, and I think that's common across the country. But additionally, we then have citizens trained in CPR, volunteers that go to classes at fire departments and learn how to do CPR. And they activate 911. Some of them may or may not start a CPR, but they call a dispatcher who's been instructed to give them verbal commands on how to start CPR on the patients. And then we're followed up by firefighters, the closest fire apparatus, whether it's an A car or an engine, or it could even be a ladder truck. And we firefighters get there and start CPR, and we have oxygen and we have defibrillators. And that's pretty much what we're limited to. So that's then followed by ALS, paramedics, who really follow up and give medicines that really help convert arrhythmias and create that survival rate. So when we say that survival rate, that is walking out of the hospital after you've had one of these events. And I just wanted to hit on a couple other things. You in Bellevue, like us for Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority, I know your fire chief you were recently reaccredited through the Center for Public Safety Excellence. And we have a similar accreditation in Puget Sound, of which I've been the accreditation manager for the last 10 years. And I'm waiting for somebody to take my spot anytime. And it really is a lot of work, but it's a testament to, one, the faith you have in your fire department, two, the the credit and responsibility that you give your fire chief to say that we're willing to hold ourselves up against a national standard to show that we're the very best and we're really offering the best services to our citizens. So since 1985 and 86, and certainly since 2001, the firefighters have really taken it, and paramedics in this county have taken it upon themselves to do a campaign. And we raise, our goal here in this cycle is to raise just over $100,000. I know you're all elected officials, and you have to do a campaign occasionally, and it's a pain. Most of that money comes out of our pockets. Our local unions contribute that. I made the challenge to our firefighter unions to give $50 per member, and that would get us just over $100,000. We have a lot of corporate sponsorships as well over the years, which has been great. And we're going to use that money. You're going to see signs like this going up around Bellevue here starting tomorrow, and really all over the county. As well as we'll do a mailing, a targeted mailing, much like everyone, and you're all familiar with, is with your campaigns. And now we'll really hit on the social media banners, all those things we hate. But that's the way it is. You know, I think this signing up by a kiosk is awesome, right? I'll bring my 16-year-old so she can show me how to do it when I come to the next meeting. So we're trying to then go to all of our city councils, all of our fire districts, and make sure that it is endorsed and really put forward to the voters that you all approve it. And I think it means a lot. It means much more than just, bless you, a couple months ago when you said, okay, we agree to put it on the ballot. You didn't endorse it, you just said, we'll go forward and put it on the ballot, because really we have that threshold within state law that said a certain percentage of cities over 50,000 have to vote to even put it on the ballot. So moving fast forward and not take any more of your time, I just ask you to help us, the firefighters and paramedics, your firefighters and paramedics, in support of this campaign. You as a city over the next 6 years between ALS, Advanced Life Support, and BLS, Basic Life Support, is projected you'll receive about just over $97 million back to the city coffers to help offset some of the costs of the fire department. I mean, certainly that's not all of the cost, but that's what you're projected to receive. And all of that is within the planning documents for the EMS levy. So I would just ask that you consider, I'd ask that you vote in support of this resolution and make it clear to the citizens of Bellevue that you support not just the firefighters and paramedics. This is more. This is about our quality of life in the Pacific Northwest, and specifically here in King County. I mean, from the very southern to the northern areas of King County, from east to west, no matter where we go, we can expect the same life-saving services from our emergency service personnel. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Markley, thank you for the presentation. Also, thank you for your service as a first responder in King County and in the South County. We appreciate that very much. It's the front line, one of the front lines of city services. So on behalf of the whole family of cities, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Truly a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks.
There is no official group that has filed to have a statement in the voters pamphlet, and we were not able to contact anyone. So the next, I'm just trying to make sure I've got this on, I do this all correct. Let me ask the city clerk to call names of any speakers who have signed up to provide further comment on this tonight.
There currently are no speakers signed up in favor or opposition.
Is there anyone in the audience tonight who wishes to speak either in favor or opposition? It appears that there are not. I don't think we actually took a motion to open the public hearing, did we?
You're not required to do that.
We're not
It's
required
limited
to.
the
That's
public.
right. On this one, we're not required to. Okay. So I will close the public hearing. And what I would like to do is ask our representative on the EMS levy to put a motion before us, if we could. Then we'll make some brief comments.
Great, yeah, I'll put the motion before us, and then I'd like to speak to it. I move approval of Resolution 9664, supporting King County Proposition 1, Medic 1, Emergency Medical Services Replacement of Existing Levy.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Bellevue City Council support the levy on the ballot. I'm going to actually start with you, and I'm just going to go, this time I'm just going to go right down the dais, if you would.
Great. Well, I strongly support the reenactment of the 6-year medical and levy. It is one of the truly great things this region does, and it creates a lot of equity across the county. If you are in North Bend or if you are in downtown Seattle, you will get the advanced life support services coming right to you when 911 is called. And the save rate of 56% of witnessed heart attacks is amazing. I personally have had ALS come to my house when one of my kids wasn't breathing, and they saved her. They took her to the hospital, and it was terrifying, but it was so reassuring to have them there. We would not be as wonderful and as livable of a county if we don't have this service available to all. So I'm going to be a strong supporter of voting in favor of the resolution. The task force was a really great program, and this levy is going to be even better than before. It's going to provide more services and better services to the people of King County. I would also point out that the 26.5 cents per thousand is the maximum rate. If you notice in the resolution, it says 26.5 cents or less per thousand, because as property values go up, the millage rate goes down because it's capped out after year 1. So it typically will go down, down, down throughout the life of the levy as far as the rate per thousand. So I just wanted to let people know who may be watching at home that that's how that works. So really pleased to have Mr. Markley come down and Mrs. Chitalas come down tonight to give us information about this, and I am an enthusiastic yes. Thank you.
Mr. Stokes.
Yeah, I too am an enthusiastic supporter of this. I served on the Regional Policy Committee and Vice Chair, and we had several briefings and discussion of this, and we passed it unanimously. Representatives from King County, Seattle, and Sound City Association. And again, it's just an amazing piece of the way public does business the best way it can. And I want to add another personal along the lines of my colleague. Years ago, my wife had an tachycardia and called up, and here comes a ladder truck, and 5 guys come in, and we said, why so many? Well, we're training. I mean, it's just part of it. But they were there immediately and took care of it. It's just amazing. So I'm enthusiastically for it and look forward to voting for it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I want to thank Councilmember Robertson for her work on this task force, and Mrs. Chitalas and Mr. Markley for coming down in support of this. How could you not support such a wonderful thing for the community? This is a levy that truly makes a difference, and you see that in the response times. I mean, that is the difference between life and death when somebody has an emergency incident. So I'm very supportive of it, and I thank you.
Mr. Newenhouse.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of good comments already, and I too appreciate Councilmember Robertson's work on the task force. Thank you for coming down here this evening. Again, don't quite understand anyone who would be against, and I guess obviously other people feel the same way. There's no con statement here,
Right.
But 100% in favor of this. So again, thank you for your service as well as a first responder.
Ms. Son.
Yeah, I'm very excited about supporting this as well. And actually, just hearing what you said about 1998 and having that study and potentially looking at doing this work differently, where the cities that have the funds to do this would take care of it, and the ones that don't might not actually get the service that they need, is kind of frightening. So I'm really glad that in the last, since 2001, we have a program that is very robust, that we can all get behind, and because at the end of the day, if there's an issue that's happening in the community, it doesn't matter if they're in Bellevue or Kirkland or, Sammamish or Federal Way. So really glad to see that this is such a well-thought-out program to support. Thank you.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee.
Thank you. Public safety, fire and police, that's number one for the city of Bellevue, and for me as well. Even as a budget hawk, this is something right on the top of my list. So I think we all have experience personally and with a lot of friends socially. We know a lot of people who have been affected, life been saved because of our wonderful, EMT services and public safety, as you just mentioned. The fact speaks for itself. So I think we're getting back lots of money that we're spending, but we're getting back a lot of it. As you mentioned, I think we're getting back $97 million, for the money that we pay. So it's very, very much, number one, it's important, needed. Number two, we're getting our money's worth and maybe more. So I support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also want to speak in favor. Ms. Chatalis and I actually worked at the county when that failed. That was quite the shock. There was the scramble to get the emergency levy on and for people to understand why this was needed. The argument at the time was this was a basic government service. And I think when you talk about the save rate in New York, we find out that it's really not a basic government service. This is, this goes beyond a Cadillac service. It's a Lamborghini service. This is top of the line type of service, and that's why we do pay for it. The tiered system works extremely well. It's very important. It's important that the whole county be involved because, as you say, no matter where you work, you're going to have access to this service. And, again, I think I may have mentioned it when this was briefed previously. When you are sitting in your kitchen at midnight on a hot summer night having a heart attack, you can hear the Clyde Hill, the doors at the Clyde Hill Fire Station open, hear that truck come down, coming to get you. And then to find out that, both of the Bellevue medics are out on runs and they're delivering patients to Overlake. There is not a room that they can get me in to get a stent in, and it's Redmond firefighters who come as the Medic 1, the advanced life support, and they're able to get you up to Evergreen, and everything is totally smooth. And you come out of the hospital 2 days later, ready to go. It is an amazing system, and that's why I enthusiastically support it. So I will call for the question on the motion for the Bellevue City Council to support the EMS levy on the ballot this fall. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Again, thank you. Thank you for the great work that you do. Councilmember Robertson, thank you for the great work that you did on the EMS levy. And Ms. Chatalis, thank you for your work at the Department of Public Health. We very much appreciate it. Is there any other business to come before the council tonight? Seeing none, we're adjourned.